East St. Louis as a phenomenon is many phenomena. I often say in a nutshell when someone asks me, you know, give me a picture of East St. Louis. I said it was the countryest place and the most urban place all in one. It was the slowest, most rural place and the raciest place that you can find. I mean, if you want to see someone doing the Skag Ballet, a kind of the dope addicts dance down the street, or the alcoholics dance. Never falling. You saw that. I mean, I saw that as a kid. If you came to town and you wanted a virgin to marry, man or woman, there were churches that bred them. If you wanted to get your hat brought to you, as we used to say, you know, mess with somebody. And it could be the end of an eye, the end of an arm, or the end of your life. So it was very fast. Anything you wanted, you could get it in East St. Louis. You could buy it. Anything you didn't want, you could drop it off in East St. Louis. Like the papers regularly reported that the mobsters dropped the dead bodies. Hitmen dropped dead bodies in East St. Areas like this, where no one would discover them unless some kids like myself and others were playing. That was East St. Louis, and to a great extent it remains East St. Louis, except that you don't have all of the industries now here in 2016 that you had. I mean, if you wanted to buy half a hog or half a cow, if you wanted to gamble and win $50,000 or $500,000, if you wanted to go to the red light district, it was one of the most religious places, one of the holiest places, one of the most southern places. I give it the name Arkansas. A lot of people come from Arkansas and Mississippi. My mother's folks came from Port Gibson, Mississippi. My father's folks were from Little Rock, Hot Springs, Holly Grove, you know, that whole rim of action in Arkansas. I grew up in the neighborhood where I'm sitting right now. This is the South End, and it was almost hermetically sealed racially. Occasionally you would see a high-ranking police officer or a delivery person. The larger supermarkets were run by people, Jews and perhaps Armenians and others. But as far as the day-to-day life of East St. Louis, you had a black side of town and a white side of town. When I was a kid, I was a delivery, I was a runner. And you could blindfold me and I could tell you the neighborhood we were in by the smell of the food cooking. I could smell the sauerkrauts, the pickles and the garlic. I knew it was in a German neighborhood. I could smell a whole lot of cayenne or a whole lot of relish. Or, you know, I knew I was in onion. I knew I was in a Jewish neighborhood. So it was Jews, Armenians, Germans, Irish. A lot of the policemen were Irish. That was all in the north side of town. Now there were strips, streets that ran the length of the north and the south, and occasionally along those corridors you found some black people over in the area where they were exclusively white. Very powerful town, lots of great athletes, lots of scholars. East St. Louis was a leader in a lot of areas and endeavors. Number 2 after Chicago in the animal processing business. Number 2 after Chicago in the railroad business. 27 different railroad lines went through here. Anybody who wanted a job could get one. Oh, so many of my buddies left school in the 11th grade, and they got jobs. When I came home from the Marine Corps in 1961, they had 3 children, a house, and a Dynaflow Buick. These were guys, literally kids. I mean, they were in their early 20s. Restaurants, social places, the Harlem Club, the Harlem Club that way, the Cotton Club that way, Nick's Country Club. Right near where we are, there was the Red Top. Everybody black who was anybody in entertainment came here. When I was a kid, I sold papers, and the bouncers were men who were contenders in the boxing business. And they knew me because my brother boxed in the Golden Glove. And when I went into one of the taverns or nightclubs to sell my paper, they would let me stand near the door. I was underage, but I could stand near the door and catch B.B. King. I could catch Ike and Tina Turner, Red Fox. Whoever was touring what was known as the Chitlin Circuit came to East St. Louis. I mean, they wanted to come to East St. Louis. And of course, all of the great white or European American entertainers came to East St. Louis to the north end of town. They came to the Broadview Hotel, whether it was Frank Sinatra or whether it was Perry Como. You know, it didn't matter. Everybody came to East St. Louis.
And did it my way.
Until the 60s, actually the late 50s, my friends, my high school buddies, and there were neighbors of mine, started to leave East St. Louis and go where? Topeka, Omaha, Kansas City, Oklahoma, the Deep South, to get jobs. The packing houses, animal processing plants started to move. The box factory, the steel factory, the glass factory, the iron works, the aluminum ore, it folded. So that's part of the history. That's part of the history of of East St. Louis. My most proudful experience is that I spent 40 plus years reading about, dreaming about, researching into, writing about, teaching about, lecturing on, doing field studies into black people. I sit here having retired with over 40 years of putting 50 and 75-cent words on my grandmother's wisdom. When somebody said, teach blackness, that's what I did for a living for 40 plus years. Nothing takes off from nowhere. It's impossible to take off from nowhere. A plane doesn't, a bridge doesn't. Nothing takes off from nowhere. And so, Sankofa, you must know where you've been to have a start.